agenda.
Here it is. I have all of them.
You have all of them.
Oh, again,
One.
sorry.
Not all of them.
You have one, right? Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Thank you.
It smells so good. I know, I think I'm starting to get hungry.
There's some in the kitchen, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I brought some for you.
It smells good.
I got pizza crackers. I'm telling you, try them. You'll love them. I've never heard of them. Yeah, well, they're not pizza crackers. They're like an Italian cracker, but I swear they taste like pizza, and I'm just like obsessed with them right now. So,
Welcome everyone to our first in-person CPC meeting for the school year. I'm so glad we're able to do this. So we are in person and on Zoom today. It is May 3rd. We're getting going at 11:05. Welcome everyone. If you're watching this at a later time, we have Echo here who is going to take it away.
hi, you guys. This is our CPC meeting, for May 3rd. The time is 11:07. On a Saturday, and we are starting our meeting up. I am Echo Miller. I'm representative for Josephine County. We're gonna start with a blessing and a prayer. So on this beautiful, beautiful Saturday that we're starting to get all the thunder people and all the cloud people coming to visit us. So good medicine before those hot summer days come, because boy, are they around the corner. So go ahead and start that up. Aho, Nanakia Sasamat, Saamna Padula, Saamna Padula, Sakata Paka Sakala, Sakata Patiti Puli, Maamni Santa Maklats. Oh, I say thank you for this beautiful day. We pray to our ancestors in a good way to bless us and our beautiful families and everyone in our community. And yes, thank you. Thank you, my beautiful friends and family. So moving forward, all my relations, we're going to start with the approval of the minutes for the 4/7 for last month. Has anyone gone over the minutes for last month?
So I
Email.
did print it somewhere.
Didn't we get this, they were sent to us, right?
Oh, here they are. So I did print one copy out and then they've been sent in and they're also in the agenda online. Let me make sure that's shareable for Randall.
And Allison, is she in?
I don't see her.
Yeah.
Did anybody get to see those minutes in their email yet?
I browsed through them. Comprehend them.
I will say that the newsletter is the biggest newsletter I've ever seen us have for our Indian education program, but it is absolutely gorgeous. That thank you so much, AC. It was a beautiful newsletter, like so much. And that picture that they used of you, Angelica, is like that's a really good one. You're like glowing in it. It's good energy. So a beautiful, but if you print that, it's not going to be a newsletter. It's going to be a newsletter book. It's going to be like, it's like 15 pages or something. It's it's a doozy, but it's the end of the year, guys. It's all right.
So that's the previous meeting notes. I have them on this screen. There's also one hard copy floating around here for everyone in person.
Yeah.
Yep. So we talked about upcoming events, SOU getting rescheduled. They did send a list of dates. And it sounds like it's gonna be the 30th, right before Native Games.
Are we still trying to move forward with the powwow for the Road Community College? I feel like everybody with everything going on has kind of put that on a back burner and we haven't communicated that. Was that in? They never reached out.
So they did actually reach out to Alyssa as a student, because Alyssa works with the diversity team there. And they had lunch with Alyssa and asked her to basically ensure that everything was appropriate and those kinds of things, and to, you know, be the person there to help manage. So when you guys do plan it, if you do, you'll be receiving Alyssa.
Beautiful, beautiful. Maybe we should push back for the beginning of like the school term in fall instead of trying to compile it on for the end of the year with the graduations. I mean, we have several events coming up. We have our Native Games. It's a lot going on with our program right now, and also with the funding. So that's something that we should put on the back burner as the parents to communicate on. Maybe take a vote on it if we want to try to push forward to do it here in the next couple of months, or if we should push it back until the fall. I feel a fall would be like a welcome back to school, getting the, school year, everyone fresh from summer and having the energy to put into it. So something to think about for everyone. For the minutes for the agenda, since we just went over there, do I have anyone that votes to approve those?
Yes,
Yep.
I vote to approve.
Am I approved? Do you have a second? Yeah,
All right,
Jessica seconds it.
you got it
Cool.
locked in. Thank
Locked
you.
in. Second on the agenda is education appreciation for serving, so we're gonna let JC take over.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, so hello everyone. I know that serving on the CPC, especially for the last few months, has been very stressful on everyone's spirit. I just want everyone to know how appreciated you are. Our program has always ran off student input and parent voice, and we continue to do that, and we're very proud of that. Here in Southern Oregon, our little corner. And so I just wanted to let you all know that I appreciate you very much. And so I made little certificates of appreciation. Randall, I will get you yours. And also Jackie and Allison when I come there on Tuesday. And then I also made, so this is the medicine that we collected as a family in Reading for the beautiful pine nuts. And so you'll all be receiving a beautiful necklace as well as just a thank you. Thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for the hard conversations at times. And also just thank you for putting the students, above everything else. And I think it really shows character and commitment to be able to do that consistently. And also, I think we have a great representation of the students and families of our program represented here in this room and on Zoom. So thank you.
That's me.
God, you keep going there. All right, you're gonna have quite a large one.
These are beautiful.
Stephanie.
Stephanie, it reminds me of the one that Kyla made me for my birthday. It's gonna match.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's so good, Kelly.
I don't have any hair anymore. Once you move my hair.
I love the haircut. I want to tell you, I'm
It's
loving
fresh.
it. It's like fresh and like funky and like summer is coming and it's like the perfect.
Well, thank you.
I love it.
Takes some getting used to.
Yeah.
I want to move my hair. There's no hair.
It'll come back.
It just
It-
moved already.
Throws back way.
Thank you so much. Get that plains medicine.
But I made coastal. This table's impossible to manage too, but.
It's funny, Angelica, every time you stand up in front of it, it projects on you, so you look like you got like this whole like cool tattoos going on. Every once in a while, you get Randall's like face on your arm, like you got a Randall tattoo. Sorry.
Thank you so much. And then we also got one for Lee.
What?
I know what it takes. Give her some girl so she can be here and do all the things she does.
Those dads and everyone.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome so much. Thank you. And we have.
Love it.
Yeah.
Take it.
All right, so that's done. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
I love that you collected like the pine nuts.
It
with
was
the kids
really
in the mouth.
wonderful.
That's
It
just
was really
like,
wonderful.
it's so beautiful.
Yeah, sorry.
Anyway, these are what these certificates look like. They're beautiful.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful printout. We did. I love that.
Yeah, we found this little park down in Reading,
Yes.
and I can't remember the name of it. But we
King's
went down there and,
Kingdom.
yeah, I'm not sure, and we
Right,
went down there and all.
beautiful
all kinds
medicine
of-
there.
I mean, I was breaking.
I want to go down and get more
Yeah.
complete.
Do they have like water, like,
And the
Oh, yeah,
water
there's a river down
wall
there.
is like
It wasn't like,
perfect, and like when I use it and like the ceremonies, it's like a very like, like it's really like broke down, so it's not sticky copal, it's like crystallized perfect, so when I like go into lodges and ceremonies and like use it, it's the most perfect medicine to work with. Hey.
So this is the pine cone that they come from. They're known as gray pines. But if you look in there, basically the pine nuts will just be sitting there. And then you process them and it turns into a bead. But they're used of this area specifically. So it's really beautiful. But yeah, you can see where I plucked them out.
yeah.
There
the
was-
animals get a lot of,
Yeah.
animals get a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get it out for you, mama.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're also called bigger.
Oh, I got
Bigger.
it pretty.
You gotta
They're
like
a
after
little
the
bit more
first rain.
silver.
Yeah, that's real
You
Yeah,
can
you
always
can tell when you're
tell.
driving
They
by,
are,
the
they're
trees will
silver,
be silver.
like a bluish silver, and they also are kind of shabby looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, but beautiful medicine.
Beautiful. Thank you, JC. Amazing. We love it. We'll wear it with honor with my regalia, all the upcoming ceremonies. And I love to, and a lot of our jewelry, we don't use silver because when we go in a ceremony, we don't wear silver or different metals because it interrupts our connection to spirit. So whenever I'm gifted any kind of necklaces that don't have those, it makes me really happy because I know that I can wear those into those grounds and into those ceremonies and be able to take that medicine with me. So very, very
Thank you.
special. Thank you.
I'm just grateful to live here in such a beautiful place. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm only gonna swing into the coastal regalia, which is my favorite.
Yeah, which is funny because a lot of the coastals use.
I know, and to me, it's just the most
We with the
beautiful
long
here.
buckskin,
Yeah.
give you those buffalo
Yeah.
hide,
Yeah.
you'll see a lot of the
Yeah.
grandmas dressed in the beautiful. And then, yeah, so it's good to trade out. That's what
Yeah.
our tribal is
That
all
is it,
about,
yeah.
is sharing that
That's
medicine,
right.
that beauty.
Thank you.
So we love that. Let's see, next on it is we have the EASIE, or we say it, EC, grant application, with Lisa and Andrea. So do you want to take over that portion, or did she take over that portion of the conversation, or?
Yeah, I had Andrea and Lacey down to present, and I also gave Lacey co-host capabilities. So if you want to share your screen and present here, that'd be great. However you guys want to do it.
I'm wondering if I can share really quickly with everybody, just the two handouts that I passed out. So that when we talk about it, you can use them as references. So the first page is just a page. Remember at the last meeting on the 28th, the CPC worked really hard to try to think about what activities and how they would be prioritized. And then we took pictures of them. So I later put them in here and I tried to add a little bit more details to each of the activities, like instead of just saying culture nights, it has some more in terms of like what activities sometimes they have done as part of culture night, and also how they produce, provide food during the culture nights and so on. So I added a little bit more details.
And Andrea, I just shared the link in chat. So those on Zoom, if you go into chat, you should be able to open up that document.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Okay, and I'm sharing here, Lisi, unless you want to share.
Oh, no, that's fine. If you are able to share, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
So that's the first one. So if you look through the bottom half that starts in with the green section, those are the ones that we had written in green, and again with a little bit more details, just so that but I included in the folder the pictures that we of the originals that we had worked on. So then that is the initial part that we we did. So thank you so much. That was a lot of great conversations. And then for the EC application, we need to determine what, there is not necessarily a place to say culture night. And so we have to select what from the activities that are available during the application to see which one culture night works with, and then select the objectives that those that activity would meet. So for example, the very first page in the second packet, that is a multi-page. I went a little bit, we have, and it's in the folder that was sent in the email yesterday. It's included in there. And it looks like this. Okay. And you will see that the first page has culture night. So in the first page, Lizzie will talk a little bit more about it before we start with this document, but I just wanted to show you how it's organized. So for example, we have culture nights on top, and then it has a list of all the objective options that show up when we are entering them in the application. So then we have to select which of the objectives culture night meet. So for example, it would meet the objective of increasing knowledge of cultural identity and awareness, as well as increased parent participation. We also had increased academic achievement. Could be that if we continue with the tutoring option, but during the conversation that we had, it was something that we're like, oh, that works, but for some program like in Jackson might work better than in Josephine. And so that's so I selected the two that would work for both. And the reason why that later on we'll need to see is that whenever we select an objective, we actually need to say how we're going to measure it and what tools we're going to be using for measuring. And so that's one part. So the second page on this document, remember how I said we get to select the objectives, but these are the activities that give us that the application gives us. So you'll see that for culture nights, it would meet if we have the tutoring, cultural responsive academic support, because we're helping with that, cultural responsive mentoring, because students are working with their elders and elders are constantly mentoring throughout, and then the activity of parent involvement. So this one the culture night would meet like 2 or 3, depending on in terms of activities that we would select, and 2 objectives or 3 objectives if we can with tutoring. So I just wanted to show you how it's organized. I know that in the email, I do not know if you had a chance to read it. We talked about that the position for next year, it will fund through Title VI a 0.7 position, 0.7 FTE. That's 28 hours a week. And that includes salaries, payroll expenses, cell phone, travel for mileage, as well as health insurance. And then we have the around $10,000 that are funded by the local service plan, by local school districts, and that will fund an additional 0.1 FTE, was a 0.1 for, that is 4 hours to make it a total of 32 hours. So that's more or less what the funding is going. The reason why it seems a little bit high is because we have to plan for the increases that go from this year on to the next year. Like, for example, employees usually will get a COLA adjustment as well as a step increase in the salary chart. And right now the classified union is in the middle of negotiations with their district, and that might be impacted and it may be greater. So we added a little bit of buffer to meet, have the funding to meet our obligation to the contract once it's settled. And the way it works, that even if it gets settled, for example, let's say in December, we have to back pay the increase all the way to August, September, October, November. And so that's why we need to have that little buffer on that. So the funding, again, 0.8%. And the CPC came up with great activities, but there were many. And knowing that we're going to have one facilitator serving both Jackson and Josephine County, then we really need to prioritize which ones we put into the grant application. Because what we put in the grant and saying that we're gonna do, that's what we are responsible for reporting to in next after the next school year. And
So in very layman's terms, if we can't prove it, we can't do it. So all of the data has to be backed up and you have to show everything that you've done. That's why we do the RSVP form. That's why we do the after event survey. So we have to categorize somehow and prove, yes, these things were done, and we have to be able to show how the steps and if it was successful. So does anyone have any questions so far? We'll do a little zooming.
Right, yeah, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so this grant right now, the whole grant goes to a single facilitator salary, and that's what we're submitting it for.
Yes, that's
Okay.
all it pays, and it's not a full salary.
Yeah, so can this committee vote to make a portion of that entire grant, maybe go like 10% tutoring, 90% to the facilitator salary?
So, just as a reminder again, that we, as a CPC, they could. And we really need to make sure that we prioritize, and in the email, we talked about, think about the number of hours that each of the activities take to be able to be put together so that we can make sure that what we are asking the person to do is they can do it within those 32 hours. And we have to include travel within those hours as well. So for example, for culture night, the facilitator, if it is, let's say the facilitator is in Jackson County, and then that person has to drive to Josephine County, we have to account for at least 45 minutes of travel one way, and then another 45 minutes travel back to the office in Medford. So that's another hour and a half that is just taken in travel. And so that's why when we think about the activities that we want to put in the grant, we need to account for, think about how much it will take per week. and then see which ones are reasonably, that we are a priority, and we can make them work with our schedule, with the hours.
I don't think you can see Mama.
And that they can be measured and that we can report on it at the end. So, but the CPC gets to decide how they
Yeah.
wanna do it.
So what is the number for the full grant? What's the number, the numerical amount?
Yes, the total is $87,971.
Okay, so
And
that can, as it's currently states, can go to, all of it can go to a single facilitator, or we can potentially allocate, like, say, 10% to tutoring, and then that tutoring will be prioritized.
it could be, yes,
Could be.
yes. And again, the
And that
current
would-
funding would only
so-
pay 28 hours.
With tutoring, if you do tutoring, you can increase academic achievement, because there are studies that show
Mhm.
one-on-one tutoring increases academic achievement. It is supported by research. Also, you can increase college enrollment, because the better grades a child has, the more confident they are, they think that they can go to college. You can also increase support for at-risk students with tutoring, because tutoring is one-on-one,
Mhm.
and those kids are asking for help, and actually they should be helped if they're asking, so it all is preparation. All right, this is everything that you can mark off when you include tutoring.
Mhm.
Oh. We've got Lacey asking a question.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to ask a question because I'm wondering if we are talking about tutoring and I heard one-on-one tutoring, I just want to make sure that we are keeping in mind that we currently have 283 children who are eligible for the program, which means if we are offering tutoring, we need to be more specific about maybe grade levels that we're talking about. Andrea and I did take a look at the numbers, and in high school alone, we're talking about 125 children. And so one-on-one tutoring is extremely labor intensive, time intensive, and so that makes it really expensive. And even in small groups, even if we were to be able to do it in small groups, we would be talking about all of the schools in Josephine and Jackson County where students who are eligible for the Indian Ed program reside. So just getting to those places. So just, theoretically CPC can do, you guys can do whatever you want to do, but I just want to kind of set those, that context for you to just to kind of know what the context is in terms of being able to actually deliver, because whatever we say that we're delivering, we have to make it equitably accessible to all of the children who for whom we have a 506 form, because that's where our funding is coming from. It's coming from student counts for all 283 of those children. So we can be specific about grade levels and focus, that sort of a thing. But in terms of, like, if we were to say we're going to offer this to high school kids, we're going to offer it to high school seniors, we would have to make it available to every student for whom we are receiving funds who fits that general description. And so that really adds to the numbers and makes it more expensive to do so. So have folks think about that as you're deciding what you want to prioritize.
You can just allow it until funds are exhausted, just offer it, like, because not all kids are gonna want tutoring. They're gonna actually, it's really hard for kids to ask for help. And if a kid is asking for help and their parents asking for help, that's, you've got two, that it's, you just use the funds until they're exhausted. It's not like, you're being discriminatory, it's just, first come, first served, you ask first, you get help first. It's true.
Do you have a thought about who would be providing the tutoring? Do we have ideas about the actual person providing it?
So we have talked to Kiwani, who is the Native Nations Liaison of Southern Oregon University. We have talked about utilizing the SOU Native American Student Union to provide tutoring for us, but also it's something that really should be paid. and, they would do a certain, amount of hours out of the goodness of their heart. And then also we would do older student mentorship, tutoring as well, we've talked about in the past. But if we were to contract one person, I think, there is certainly many educational students available from SOU that are Native and that can already go through that licensure to have that tutoring credential. So we could certainly look at that too. But in the past, we have talked
If we
about.
did do something like that though, and it was run through the SOU, does that mean that only the Jackson County students would have access to it? And therefore, that means that a larger portion of the funding would still be going to the Jackson County and leaving Josephine County students and families out of a part of the original grant that is supposed to go to both counties.
That's a great idea.
Discussed tutoring
We-
previously and mentioned the idea of offering it at culture nights. At least one family, if not more, had said that that's not a conducive environment to offer tutoring. And so there's a lot of logistics around this that would be challenging.
Yes.
For sure, so I'm wondering if. One of the other objectives that we had on here was to compile a list of family resources. If that could be an area that's focused on to provide those connections for families who need that, because as we said, not every family is going to need that. If a family is needing help to navigate that, I think that's something that the facilitator could potentially support the family in making the connections that they need in order to receive services.
I also completely agree with the student body of our families, is stepping in and having like leadership positions and helping with the tutoring as well. As long as the children are being like reimbursed with their time and their energy. And so that means that we would, as families, need to do something that made them feel good about helping the younger little ones and like, but a lot of those, high school and college kids, they do like to participate in stuff like that because they get to be like the big brother type, big sister type of program. And so that's something that maybe we should look into as well, see what kind of students and has the time and energy to dedicate a couple hours and what kind of littles need that help. It is more so though for the high school and the graduating students that seem like would need the more of the help of it. Because I can't tutor. It's cool.
I just want to add for when I'm watching later and I make the notes that we could also include Road Community College, as well as SOU, so that we are, utilizing more service area
Yes.
for our little Southern Oregon. And yeah, so I'm just gonna add that for my notes.
But we can't ask the parents to drive their students home.
I do want to point out too that for those that are saying like, we can have our college students at SOU like help with tutoring, like they also are going to have to go through the background check process.
Correct.
And if they're having to pay for that, they're not going to want to do it.
So any volunteer for our program goes through the background check procedure. I think everyone's pretty familiar with that. So that would be, I believe that comes from the LSP funds, from ESD, not the Indian Ed funds, I believe. So, but I'll get clear on that for the notes too.
Yeah.
Indian Ed funds.
Okay, yeah, because I know like at least when I was going to school, like I was a broke college kid, like I didn't want to have to put out any extra money than I already had to.
Yeah.
So, last two things that I wanted to make about tutoring. One other point that was brought up, at least for Jackson County, was that the high school students who attend Culture Night are great about supporting each other. Some of them have already taken courses so they can tutor one another. And they'll help each other actually learn the process and not just give each other answers. So that's one thing about for older students. The second thing that I wanted to say is just an idea about perhaps recruiting high school volunteers from NASUs to maybe come and tutor or like have a buddy that they can support. or even some of the older kids that attend culture night, it's something great that they could put on resume. It's volunteer experience if they're trying to do, you know, academics outside of high school and all of that. So, maybe that's an effort that.
Yeah, we don't have any
Yeah.
high schoolers.
Yeah.
But you guys
So-
have asked when you're.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to add to the conversation for when tutoring needs to be prioritized. And then also for next year, there were suggestions of making culture night daytime weekends. So that might be a great suggestion too for that peer mentorship support. But I think having a significant plan in place. If everyone is also aware, when we shared our intake form, it was 70% of Native American families that completed that intake form had requested tutoring. So it's not a few families, it's the majority of students.
20%, not 10%, you know, if it's so important, maybe 20%, not 10%.
So we definitely need to prioritize it.
So what I'm wondering,
Yeah.
if it would be okay, if we could go with what they, like the activities that the CPC had prioritized earlier at the last meeting, and look at how long it would take each. And then that way you can see what you want to use that time for that person. Like, for example, when and JC would know much better than I can, but I estimated that every culture night takes at least 6 hours. And so out of the 32 hours a week, at least 6 would go to one culture night that week. If the facilitator were to keep only doing one per week, like one in Jackson, one in Joseph in the next week, and then one in Jackson and Joseph, they rotate. So that means that out of the 32 hours, now we're down to 26, 26 hours left. And so now, and this is, again, if all the funding with the LSP and the grant goes to this. So then it would be good for us to look at the other activities as to how much we think realistically would take a week to complete. And maybe some will not be done every week, but on average, if we think about like just, and so that we are thinking about those things. So if you could take a look at this one, just so that we can narrow down again, what we put in the grant, it doesn't mean that that's the only thing we can do. If things, more people help, or something like where for some reason the Indian facilitator does have more time, more things can be done. But what we have to put in the grant is what we have to report on and that we have to do.
Yes, that, if so, to put the tutoring in the grant, we have to do it.
Yes.
That's good, that's a good thing.
And so the next activity used to say local native language instruction. And when we look at the objectives, later on, we have to think about whether it's more exposure, which I think it is more like what I was hearing in our conversations about exposure to native languages and for students to have an opportunity to learn rather than proficiency. Because, and so, because that would take it would have lots of requirements in terms of who teaches it. And it might be a full-time job right there.
We do get exposed to language during culture nights, so we would be meeting that criteria.
And our tribe, my tribe, shares language on their website, and I can even sign up for online classes. So
Most tribes do.
So some of this stuff, the facilitator really doesn't have to. The tribes they just have to connect parents with tribal resources. Sometimes they don't actually have to do the tribe job for them.
Like I said, exposure is easy as we like today, it's learn is.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Thank you.
So
The grant too, there's, the teachers here will know, but there's so many certifications for language if we put it in a federal grant. You
Right,
know,
Yeah.
so like just having exposure and like, I think is wonderful. Yeah.
Well, I think it's good as a starting point, but we also discussed
Sorry.
going on beyond exposure for the purposes of being able to apply for more grant money as well.
right.
I caught it right at the end of you talking, sorry. I'm not fast with the flipping.
So, so again, it could be where it is part of like if we do some resources, it could be here are the parents here, like connecting the resource, all the material, like tribes websites, the lessons. That would be one thing, or if it wasn't to be in culture night, it would take time for the Indian facilitator to connect with the language instructors for them to come and cost, and then all that takes time also. So is that something that you would like to keep in the grant and estimate a number of hours that you think that would like per week, they would have to be dedicated to that for the Indian facilitator to do?
Yeah.
Okay, so how much time do you reasonably think? that is-
Percentages instead of hours.
Well, the thing is that percentages, because it's percentage of 32 hours, it's easier to talk in terms of hours or 30 minutes kind of things, for example. So that, because it's not like we have a number wise is easier, in my opinion.
I would say like an hour to 2 hours, if they're gonna, let's say we start incorporating regular language exposure or instruction. Maybe we choose 2 or 3 languages to focus on for the whole school year, and they spend 2 hours prepping materials or words of the day or games that they're then gonna use at culture night, for that month. I would say would at least take a couple hours.
Right, so we could like allocate like 2 hours to it,
Okay.
because we only have like, what, 6 hours left?
So I also just want to highlight, so it's common knowledge and recorded and in the notes. That currently Stephanie Ledford serves as our Takelma liaison. And so if you notice Takelma, if you notice the Takelma language being used, all of that has come from staff that's provided by the Cow Creek tribe. And also, yeah, I just want to highlight that, because it is every month, hey, what do we call the newsletter, and that kind of stuff. And so that's all as a volunteer. So that's been wonderful, to use and utilize. And I also just want to take a second to check in on our Zoom compadres. Randall, do you have anything to add? Jackie, how you guys feeling? I just want to make sure that you have time to share and speak. If you have questions or if there's anything you'd like to add, just pop off.
I'm good at the moment.
Okay, great. All right, so that's the language.
So if I'm hearing right, we had 32 hours in total, -6 for culture night per week, -2 per week for.
Maybe not 2 per week, what do you think? Maybe it's 2.
Like an hour per county.
Yeah, but you have to think there's prep time too, so we have to give the facilitator time to get the information. And the pamphlets and everything ready, or whatever that we're gonna be sharing, so definitely, like a half hour is just like someone being like, well, this is, just jump in there, but if they're gonna actually like have printouts, like with the picture, and this is a tree, and this is how you say tree in this language, that is a process of having to go and make that and create that, and so giving the facilitator time to be able to make that criteria and make that, it's, we gotta definitely negotiate those type of timeframes, and especially if we're doing multiple languages, 3 different languages is definitely, extra work too.
And I just want to add really quick, and then I'll get to you, Randall. The languages, so our tribe is intertribal. And if we went by the most tribes represented, it would be Cherokee. Second is Yurok, and third is Karuk. So if we went by the lands that we are on, then we would utilize Dikelma, which is spoken by more than one of the tribes of Oregon. So I just want clarity for that. And yeah, Randall.
So my question is, with the 2 hours that were being dedicated for the month, it seems like we're expecting the facilitator to learn each one of the 3 languages.
No,
No, that's not how that's being
Collecting resources.
Yeah.
that's not how that's being said, because you're expecting the facilitator to understand what a tree is in Karuk, Yurok, and Cherokee, so they can talk smartly about it.
No, just connecting us to the resources.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not
We
what's being
learn
said.
together, we learn
Finding
together.
the videos to share at Culture Night, ordering
But
the
that's not the way
books.
it's being said.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that clarifying statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great for the notes. Thanks, Randall.
So 2 hours seems like a decent amount of time per week, right? Okay, sounds good.
So that brings us down to 24 hours. Thank you, Lizzie. So sorry.
Oh, sorry, it's my turn. I don't know. I just wanted to ask, Andrea and JC, have we established the amount of time that we need to also allocate toward those items that were in red, that were sort of the agency, like 506 forms and those pieces? I'm wondering if we should account for that before we start talking about the next thing, so we know that we have what time we have left to allocate.
Thank you so much, Lizzie, for bringing us up, because yes, those are the pieces on the top, under the black title and the red title. Those are things that have to be required for the different fundings. So for example, I was thinking, we do not get 506 forms every day. But when we do, sometimes it requires multiple calls or to make sure that it's all complete. But on average, for example, it would be like 15 minutes a day at the most. Map?
Yeah. So, but we don't get them every day. So on average, yes, 15 minutes. But each form possibly takes about an hour. Because we review the form and then we welcome the parents and phone call, email, and then we add them to Parent Square. Parent Square is not super user friendly, so you have to manually upload the student and then you have to manually upload the parent. So like each new student, I would say it takes about 1 hour. We then have to coordinate with Lacey, we add them to our spreadsheet, all of that stuff. We coordinate with the family, we welcome the family, we add them to the newsletter, everything. So I would say 15 minutes per day on average, yes. Because there's times right at the beginning of the year where you're going to get a lot, and then you're not going to get any for months.
Thank you. So then facilitate and document the monthly CPC meetings and offer support to the CPC. How much time do you think weekly would that on average?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, yeah,
I
you
don't
have to
know.
just like average your monthly, right? So.
And I think it is like the communication that
It's
she does.
to be determined as. work
It is
per day.
hard, yeah.
It is really hard. I mean, you have to categorize all the different things that they do, like the facilitator is creating the newsletter, sending out the RSVPs, ordering the food, finding out who's gonna be helping, like guest facilitators, what are the projects, what, like what is the criteria?
For CPC.
Or just for the, not the facilitator as a whole?
No, that one is just for CPC meetings and offering support to us.
Okay.
So the meeting itself, typically an hour, and typically it's an hour before and an hour after. So an hour before and then another hour a week of constant support. But depending on what's going on, I think, I would say probably once a month, at least a minimum of 5 hours.
So if we averaged it out, it would be at least 1 hour per week.
Yeah.
And no,
And then, you know, of course, like this time it was a little more because I made like the certificates, the necklaces, you know, that kind of stuff. So I would add like another 5 at end of the year for those types of things.
And just as a reminder, if they're in Zoom, then we don't
There's no
count
travel.
travel. But if for doing it in person, like switching locations, then it would require adding
Travel.
time. Again, another and a half just in travel. Okay, so 1 hour per week on that. The other one says, for Title VI is recruitment, because that's how we get families. And so part of creating the newsletter is shared with not just our families, but shared with the community at large. So that's letting others know, as well as tabling events. So how much time do you think in terms of recruitment? Not only just, some days it's a whole day, like tabling at a powwow, for example.
So I'm just gonna look really quick. So this is the Indian Ed data that we maintain all year. So these are our tabling efforts. So really anytime there's something big going on, we've tried to be there. So it looks like September, that was a lot. October, November, that's Native American Heritage Month, and then really nothing until spring again. So, but that's all day for tabling. So sometimes, you know, for larger events, it could be, you know, more hours. But also recruitment efforts would include like sending the newsletters, you know, all of those kinds of things as well. So I would say at least.
And also I'm thinking about all the events posting on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
All those things that you do to.
Fair Square.
Yeah.
All the things.
So if you were to average out, how much do you think per week?
I would say probably an hour a week at least. But then during certain, you know, powwows, it's 2 days.
2 days, yeah.
But there's certain times where you're not doing it at all.
Correct.
Okay, so.
But then also, you know, is it feasible? Because if we look at the form, I think I've gotten maybe 1 or 2
from those
students from those events. Yeah, so if you see the number there, and I can share this too on my.
But is that something required of the facilitator?
It is required that we do recruitment.
Was throughout the year.
Possible for parent committee to support with recruitment?
Of course.
Yeah, in terms of.
Jemiah's done it, yeah, of course.
And so, and I want to mention that some events, it was just tabling, and other events like the SOU powwow, it involved more. Like, for example, it is the purchasing of snacks and water for the children and the families. The setting is helping, arriving early to set up, is helping the children with, I've always seen JC and Teresa braiding hair for, and then helping them put on their regalia.
And also it's a way of supporting our community partners, like MLK, being at the Red Hawk Memorial Powwow, beautiful, you know, beautiful event to support our elders. I was honored to be invited to the Rogue Valley Youth Correctional Powwow. But yeah, so it does a lot of work in like community support and that kind of stuff, and letting people know, hey, we're still here. But in terms of what we've results, you can see the number here is how many 506 forms we have received at that event.
Do you have any data about the Native American Heritage Month one? That was of the children.
The 19th one, the 10/19.
That's Acorn Festival. So right here.
No, that was
The indigenous peoples, they have been at the museum, at Children's Museum downtown.
No,
not-
that
it's
was
not on there.
SOU.
No, there was one at the Children's Museum, like.
Alright,
Yeah.
so.
For recruitment, requires somebody returning on boards, right?
Well, it's for recruitment, JC and Teresa have to do the outreach.
Right, no, I'm saying, so to recruit a student, you have to get those forks, right? Get those forks, so that's what is the.
That's the measured result.
So,
Correct.
so, and you can do all types of different recruitment activities, right?
Yeah.
So let's say a family comes into the district, native families, they look at the program, they see. The entire grant goes to a single facilitator salary, okay? Maybe they don't really want their child to join, care if their child joins that program because, right, the 100% is we're still there. What if they see that 50% of that grant goes to tutoring? Then they want to get their kid into that program because then that gives them access to tutoring.
Yeah.
Well, we can
tutoring
ask
could-
for the grant, we're asking for the money, and we have to
No,
just
we already got the
say.
money, we're just asking for what it's to go to.
No, we don't. We're asking for the money, that's what we're asking for, by saying, this is what we're gonna use the money for, can we have it, please?
Yes, we don't have the funds,
Right, so we don't have
Yeah.
the funds physically, but the amount is already determined.
it is a preliminary amount as long as our application is approved.
And that's based on student count, student
Yeah.
enrollment
So
numbers.
student count is related to the numbers that you recruit, so if you want more
Correct.
students in. And a parent sees there's a benefit to the program, then they may more likely sign their child up.
Yeah.
Because we know that there are more native families in this district than are signed up. I see them, but if they don't see a benefit for their child joining the program, they're not gonna, I can understand why they don't do the form.
Well, this one, we don't really have any data about why those families are not. there.
So recruitment hours should be at 1.5 hours then?
Yeah.
I think, a week, yeah, a week.
Yeah. Also, recruitment, that was the goal, that we had selected because we knew our enrollment numbers were dropping. So that was a way of encouraging families to support us. And also our program's rather stringent on, so there's a lot of Native families that are not eligible because they do not have that enrollment number and they're not able to get it. And also it's expensive to live here, it's paradise, but we have seen a lot of families move away, a lot. So that's, also impacting our enrollment numbers. And I think word of mouth's great, share about our program, share, wow, I received regalia, wow, I received moccasins, all those things will continue. Yes, Lacey?
Yes, thank you. And along those lines, I'm thinking about how, what you're talking about in terms of when you're at powwows and your faces are there and you're representing the program and you're getting into the community and making those connections and it is kind of doing double duty. And even though we may not get a 506 form completed during that event, the ESD is also utilizing I believe we're going to be using the LSP funds to pay for the mailings. So we send out mailings with 506 forms. We would like to do it twice a year. I think this past year we were only able to do it. Did we do it? I didn't remember us doing a second mailing.
Yeah, it was one in this fall and then one again in the spring.
Okay, that must have been when I wasn't there. So, okay, so we're doing the mailings with the 506 forms to all of the students in our consortium districts who have self-identified as American Indian Alaska Native. And so then we send it with self-addressed stamped envelopes so that we make it as easy as possible for families to return them. And even if they are not totally complete, that's where the Indian Ed facilitators will follow up and make phone calls and work with those families to try to bring them on board. So I think there's the direct route of like getting a 506 form completed during an official like in a tabling event right there on the spot. But then there's also kind of that longer term exposure where families might go to events or learn about events through the newsletter, and they might see that visibility of the program. And then when they receive the letter in the mail with the form, it's a familiarity that, oh yeah, I think I met that lady, or I think I saw that they have that banner out. That's that program that was at this event. And so, we can kind of like layer on our outreach efforts. So that's another aspect of the outreach that that the ESD takes on primarily, and the facilitators, it does not necessarily have to require a lot of their time, because we're using the local service plan funds, and we're utilizing more of the agency resources for the manpower to do that. So that's another piece that's kind of being contributed toward that recruitment.
Thank you.
And we've also gotten the most back from those mailings. So thanks, Lacey, for adding that.
Thank you. So the last one on the top part under requirements at Title VI grant is maintaining the data for the grant, like for example, the all the data in terms of attendance, in terms of participation in other activities outside of culture night. If JC goes tutoring, not tutoring, to NASUS, collaborate NASUS, maintaining all those pieces of information. And so that then when we have to submit the big report at the because after we get the grant, the next year we have to say, okay, how did it go? How many students were served? How many families were served? How many educators participated in professional development, and so on. So that's why it's important to keep that, because we have to submit it to the federal government. So we have to do that. As part of that, of course, having part of the SOESD having the grant is that then we are part of a team, and she's part, JC and Teresa have to attend the monthly staff meetings. It's 2 hours every month. And also we have a monthly community of practice with the ODE around Title VI that happens. And so on, that's a couple of hours. So that's another piece that's a requirement. And when it says follow SOESD procedures, is because whenever, for example, we use funding for anything, we have to like document the receipts and submit it for P cards, and being an employee, having to put in leave, and having to trying to think what else.
I would put more
what does that mean?
hours
Yeah.
than not, because it's receiving money from the federal government. And so they need more data than not to verify, and that kind of stuff. But I would say on average, it's going to be 2 to 3 hours a week just for maintaining the data.
And so I'm going to put 3 hours a week, because it's the data, is participating in those required meetings, is submitting documentation for. All right. So for that top section, at this point, we have 3, 4, 5, like
And
5 and 5.6.
Yeah,
almost
like
6
it.
hours.
Yeah, it's
Okay, 6 hours. All right.
And Andrea, one more thing that we haven't talked about, and I'm not seeing it on the list, is that's part of the LSP, the professional development aspects of it, with the Indian Ed 101 and tribal history, shared history, professional development. What are the obligations with the LSP under that? Did I miss that?
Yeah, it's right here in the first one under the red title.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So then, as part of the other funding requirement, it's that we provide professional development to school districts in around Indian Ed 101, tribal history, shared history, or support with not leading tribal history, shared history, but if a cohort of teachers would like to say, hey, we're teaching this one lesson, can you help us be thought partners before we teach it? That is another option, like instead of a full day, it would be more targeted to a specific request. And so with that, so that's one of them. Of course, some of the trainings are all day, and they don't happen every year, then every day, every week. And others might be more like 3 hours, but there's also all the emailing back and forth to set it up to participants, and even just the in-district training to collaborate and organize and drive to and all those things. So how much time do you think we should think about that we should dedicate per week? Again, this is average. And knowing that those weeks when one thing is taking more, we know that some things will not be able to be done that week and it will move on to the next week, right? And so how many hours do you think a week on average we would need to set aside for meeting that requirement?
The leading professional development training, well, I think she pretty well got it like dialed in terms of what she teaches. I haven't been to one of those trainings in a while, but.
And they're quarterly, so it's not something that happens every week. I will say for myself, I spend at least 1 hour to 2 hours connecting with teachers and connecting resources. So I get a lot of requests, sharing things, providing those things, and sometimes it's not just teachers, it's also community members as well. Yeah. So I would say at least an hour just for emails, just responding to emails, sharing resources.
Are they
And
typically
then,
like the same type of questions each time? Or different?
no. And then also the, in-school presentations, oh, I'm learning about salmon, we'd love, so sometimes it's connecting them to an elder in the community, or sometimes it's, going myself. Yes, Lacey.
I have a question, because I'm wondering if, since we had talked about the $10,000 from the local service plan being part of that, and that worked out to be about 0.1 FTE, which is like 4 hours a week.
I think that would be good, because when Teresa does do those quarterly meetings, it's like a full day and it's quarterly that she does those. So
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good estimate. And then there's a lot that can be covered with just the, consortium district support as well.
And I feel like that would
And the
need to
outreach.
also include the tribal consultations and that support in
yeah.
NASUs. So I feel like really, we've been talking about it from the perspective of how much time do we need to do things. And then my brain is just kind of switching to how much time do we have to do these things? And so sometimes we might have to be in the uncomfortable position of saying, I can't do that right now, or I'm sorry, I just don't have the capacity to do that right now. Because from what the districts are providing in their local service plan, they're providing 4 hours a week for going to NASUs, for helping with tribal consultation, and with leading professional development. So we may be in a situation where we may need to contract a little bit of those services unless districts are able to contribute more. And I mean, Andrea can speak more to what that conversation looks like with districts, but I know that Andrea's supervisor, Mark Engle-Hobson, has been in conversations with districts. It's happening right now, like he's been meeting with districts the past few weeks to talk about the local service plan. So just thinking about it from that angle of, we have 4 hours, and when the 4 hours are up, we're done for the week, because that's what the districts provided in terms of resources to do that work.
Does anyone have any questions so far? Anything they'd like to share? Anything they're feeling? Do a little check-in, see how everyone's doing. I know it's going long. I think we're almost done with this. Thank you.
Oh, just one more thing that while I'm thinking about it, because I know you guys are going to talk about bylaw reviews, but one of the documents that we do need is the a copy of the bylaws once you have it with signatures on it, because I noticed in the file before, the copy that I had found before in the Google file
Yeah.
was, it just didn't have the signatures on it. So
Yeah.
it would be wonderful to have that once you guys have that
So,
set.
we were gonna review and sign those today so that you have that for your grant application. And do we need to sign while we're all here in person, the Indian Parent Committee approval form?
I think that and Andrea can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we were gonna do is we were gonna take all of the information, the decision-making that you guys have, and we were going to put it into the actual, platform to enter it. And then I was gonna get a PDF of that before we submit it, share
Okay.
it with the CPC probably on Monday. And then,
Great.
we can do digital signatures if we need to do digital signatures. We can do a
Okay.
DocuSign or whatever works for folks. But we really wanted this to be an opportunity to really hash out what you guys want to have on the application.
Okay.
And also in the link with the folder is the draft, what has been entered so far in the folder for the application, and it's highlighted in green of what we are doing. And so because if you notice, it has all the instructions, and so we wanted you to see everything that we see, and so it's in there too. And so the part that is not in there, it's the activities and objectives, and that's what we're working on right now. Okay, so what was the professional, did you guys decide on a number of hours per week for professional development?
Andrea, one of the things I was talking about was the fact that the local service plan provides 4 hours a week for tribal
Yeah.
consultation, NASU visits, NPD. And so so that's what it's going to have to be for all those things. And if the facilitator has to say, I'm sorry, I can't do this because I don't have capacity right now, then that may be what they have to do. But that's the amount that's provided for those 3 activities.
Yes. All right, so if we started with the 32 hours total, and we subtract the 10 that we came up with from all the other activities, it brings it down to 22 hours minus the 6 for culture night. It is 16 minus 2 for language instruction. It goes down to 14 hours per week. So then we have to look at the other activities as to what you would like them to see what it would take, and then later on, if that is a priority, to include in the work. So the next one was the idea of checking in with high school students towards graduation. And we ran the numbers, and we have 125 high school students. So basically, if we wanted to do a consistent checking with high school students over graduation, it might be a full-time job right there. And so because of that, it might, what is feasible that you would request the Indian facilitator to do? Or is that something that you think, well?
So you can always a lot of tribes have their own education department, so the facilitator can always connect the child to their own tribal resources, tribal education department. I mean, that's always a possibility.
Yes, and I know we have some, I'm familiar with the ones here in Oregon.
So we have that done, actually.
Okay.
So so during our scholarship presentation.
It's still feasible then.
Yeah, if you ever look at it, I suggest you do, because it was a lot of work. But the scholarship presentation has the list of all the tribes, and that's public. It was in the most recent newsletter. You can access it there. But basically, if you look by state, it's gonna have Alaska, it's gonna have all the Alaskan villages. Boom, that's how you apply for their scholarship, which is through each tribe's education department. So yeah, that's very easy, doable.
So you can check in with 125 students.
Yeah, here's your education department, bro. Yeah. Yeah.
It's an email like once a
Yeah,
month.
or
Here's my
also
email, and then
instead of
that's my other
saying-
questions, we have any concerns?
Yeah,
we
or
need
we
help.
could copy that and say, here's more resources for you, like, cause if it's not someone applying for scholarship, they probably aren't looking at that for.
Well, it says consistent check.
Yeah, consistent.
Yeah.
Send an email once a month and say,
Well,
please
even
reach out if you have.
Yeah.
Either form, like, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
Something, yeah. Mental.
Nothing follow,
Yeah.
but something once a month where you reach out to them.
I think it's good.
And I believe, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that once you can send an email out asking how to check in and how you're doing, but then you want to be able to respond.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if the student says, oh, I'm struggling with this, that would take time then we would need to allocate that, not to just ask without being able to meet the needs.
Like, what if we say, what, 1 to 2 hours a week?
I would just include all students, really just consistent check-in with all students.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it might be, a family reaching out to that facilitator with an issue, so
So instead
rather
of,
than limit it, to like the measurable data, just say consistent student check-in and support.
One thing that I would ask, just in terms of the data, is if we can be clear about what we are expecting, because we have to create our measurements based on what we're expecting. So like consistent that's a term that isn't, like, we would need to define it. So we would need to say
Monthly.
Yeah.
monthly, but like with all 283 kids? Or are we talking about high
Those
school?
that
We're
want
talking
to,
about the
yeah.
high school students, right?
Yeah.
Towards graduation.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I heard all students and then
Yeah.
so that got me confused. So with all of the high school students, so that would involve reaching
But we
out.
have their parents' email, because that's on our enrollment form. So,
But we are specifically talking about the high school students, just checking in with them consistently, monthly, right?
but then how do we measure that to prove that it was successful for the grant? So we would have to have some sort of attendance sheet, or we would have to create a Google form, that's shareable.
To like log what you, like, you could say, these are the dates that I sent, that this number of emails were sent out to this number of kids, this number of kids responded, and then, and received services. So it's like, there's that level of service where everyone got an outreach, but it's kind of an impersonal outreach in that it's an email, it's a bulk email being sent out to everyone. So that's more of an impersonal, but it's still an outreach. And then based on who responds, then you can also log the number of personal outreaches where like you actually responded to that individual because they reached out and you provided some sort of service, some sort of response to them, depending on their needs. So I feel like if we had those two tiers.
What about like a survey, like a reach out email survey to the kids, like, how are you feeling with your graduation? Like, how are do you need help at this point in time? And then they can just yes or no. And then if they're responding with like, yes, I need help, then that can get pushed over and have a follow-up and then dedicate time and energy to there instead of,
Also,
So-
that was the form that was shared at NAFU too, like, there's a QR code, and when facilitators go, or facilitator goes to remind them, we have this QR code,
It's so
let me know how you're keeping.
Every time Angelica talks, this is how I look at her. She's got a little baby with her and he is cute.
But with the survey, email, it would be easier to get that feedback, that instant feedback from them. And it is easier for, like a high school student to be like, yes, I need help, or no, I'm totally good. And a lot of the
And
times
that's
they're probably
valid.
gonna respond
Yeah.
with just a quick,
That's
like, I'm doing
valid.
great, like, excited, and so, but that way we're at least getting those numbers
And that
back
would be great
and.
to include for the tutoring survey, or whatever.
Exactly, that links straight over into the tutoring, and so that way we're getting the feedback of what students need, so.
Include the service, so I think that could be measurable.
Yeah, so we can dedicate like an hour to it, right?
So I'm gonna suggest that if a student says, I need help, you might spend an hour with that just one student.
Yeah.
Right,
Well, I
but
mean, not really, cause if we have the tutor resources, as soon as they say, hey, I need help, you have a platform of these are the resources. And then you're just sending them straight over to the
Yeah, you don't
resources
have
that
to
they
do the
need.
same.
You're not individually taking on that responsibility. You're just giving them the information so that they have the support from the people that are there to support them, so. Yeah.
It might be other issues though, I would say 1 hour might not be enough. Cause if it's something else, like if there was
like 3 kids saying this week, I have a problem.
or if there was a bias incident at school and they didn't know how, like, what to do next, and they needed somebody to advocate, like.
Yeah, but then that also gets sent back over into the platform of the advocacy and not into that time frame. So you're actually just finding a way to manage and navigate and what section platform you need to send them into. So you're like, okay, they need tutoring or they need advocacy, or we need to go get
Mental health
for
support,
finding
whatever it is.
what category to support them in those, so. Definitely like the advice. I'm a core, like, put them all in a pile, I want to navigate everything in a pile. but-
Yeah, I love it though.
I would recommend, and that you dedicate at least 2 hours. I don't know.
That is a large number of students.
students.
Yeah, like 97 is a lot.
And also just the idea of calling them and asking them, checking them, how they are, and then building that opportunity for them to share what their needs are, and then thinking, oh, okay, I hear you, let me see what I can try to find for you, find that resource or connect them with someone, and then
I like that.
it would be a minimal. Lizzie.
I heard someone mention about falling into advocacy hours, but I don't feel like we have gotten to the point where we've allocated time for advocacy hours. And I do know that also I had heard people speak previously about other forms of advocacy, including attending IEP meetings and things like that. Those are role time consuming. So I'm wondering what the group is thinking in terms of how many hours per week would be allocated toward this sort of very personalized response, where if there is a bias incident, that they would, if they wanted the facilitator to come with them to address things at the school, or because those can be a singular incident can really take up a lot of time. And so I feel like some clear guidance as far as how much time would be allocated. I feel like the facilitator, especially with the shrinkage and staffing that we're having to experience right now, is going to put the facilitator in a very uncomfortable position of having to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't go with you to that IEP meeting. I'm booked with that time. And so just being super clear and thoughtful about what the expectations are, so that the Indian Ed facilitator can feel more comfortable making those difficult choices that they may have to make.
So, maybe it'll change for next year, but I've never once looked at a parent and said, well, this is my job description, I cannot prioritize your need. So there always has to be room for that flexibility, for sure. But then secondly, the meetings that I have attended, it's in Cape Junction. So also you gotta include travel there, for sure. And then also it might be a meeting in the morning and a meeting in the afternoon, or it could be, broken up by a lunch break. So, but I think that really includes with the student check-in, and I think it will change every week, but I think weekly, that's like a big portion of the job, is being that support and advocate for the students and the parents to navigate the school system.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling like there's a flow between the idea of checking in with high school students, there's an overlap of checking in with high school students and responding to their needs, and then also general advocacy, which may also include elementary or middle school students.
Yes.
Is it easier to think in terms of if those two pieces were more combined, what like a total amount would be, and then you would flex it from, you know, depending on what was happening, from there? Is that easier to think about?
Is number four, is number four on the list kind of what you're
Yeah.
discussing, number,
Yeah.
the list?
We did wanna prioritize our high school students, and that's kind of where we came up with the consistent check-in. So like, that's going along with the drop down of graduation rates, so,
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
yeah.
I know, it's like, why only high school kids matter? I get it now. Thanks, Ramaya. Yeah, it really does matter. Yeah, it does.
So where does that put us in terms of balancing those needs?
Oh, shoot, sorry, sorry, madam. It's empty. It's been gone since 10. I just keep drinking an empty cup. I'm sorry, Angelica.
I was just remembering the data that we had from Lacey about how, or Andrea rather, about how our high school, our native high school students are mostly outperforming.
Thank you.
In
Graduation rates except for Medford and Grants
Yeah,
Pass, which
yeah.
we believe, like the only common correlation is the size of the classrooms. So yeah, I'm exceptionally proud of our graduation rates. I know nationally it's not the case, but here, it seems like we are doing a rather good job. Way to go, guys. So, and I think a lot of it has to do with the elder support, like we're doing the blanket ceremony, like we're able to do these traditional things. And it matters, you know, it matters to our students. And also, we've never said you must get a graduation, you know, diploma to attend. We're saying, meet us where you are, you know, whether you no longer in school, whether you received your GED, because you know, we don't expect perfection. And also just having that expectation on, it takes a lot off of our students. You know, it's like, hey, you did it, you know, when nationally on average, less than half of us do. Congratulations.
Awesome.
So, yeah, so we don't wanna blanket it? I don't know. We can like give more hours to that section 4, I would think.
number four, yeah, because I feel like number four is kind of, that is for all.
So we should like add that in there? Just like blanket it, number 3 and number 4, or should we just keep it separate? I don't know. But
I like the idea of having working for all of them. I do love that we focalize more, but as it working as a whole.
yeah,
I think it's extremely important because, you know, a lot of the issues actually start in middle school.
Yeah.
And that's why we have such a high rate of dropouts in high school and then they don't get to move on to college. So if we are just only prioritizing our high schoolers, a lot of the complications have already taken
Started,
place
yeah.
in the middle school. So we have to be very aware that, you know, that's when the hormones start hitting
Right,
and the
consistently
kiddos
checking
are,
in with
it's,
maybe
yeah,
our
it's
eighth
a rough,
grader
I
Right.
got one at home, I'm a
do
little
too.
survivor, okay, we're surviving here, okay, so we have to be very, aware that, you know, with the funding and with the time and energy that we're putting into the families, that we are making sure that all those different categories are getting their own personal time and attention. But so I like the idea of putting the two together. I like the idea of, you know, really, yeah.
And how many hours would you allocate then to those?
How many hours are we at now?
Well,
we
originally we had thought about 2 for just when it was talking about the high school, but if you're going to include supporting families and students, K-12.
2 would bring us to 12 left, which.
Yeah.
If we did 2, but if we do.
So we can do like 4. That's
Yeah,
what
I was thinking double
Yeah,
it, because we're not gonna have as
meetings,
much
yeah.
feedback from like probably the others, cause they don't need it as much,
Sure.
but. And then for the ones that don't need it, even though there is, how many high school students did we say? 125. Yeah, only a quarter of those are gonna need the help and the attention
Or want it.
anyways, or want it.
Yeah.
And so that extra space and time and energy can roll over onto the, the middle schoolers or the grade schoolers even. Sometimes, children have a hard time taking on the math or the reading. And so, being able to focus some of that extra rollover energy onto, get them from the beginning. Good
All right.
base. They gotta grow up from a good base.
All right.
So-
So now we're down to 10 hours.
10 hours.
So we still have community events, website. Resource banks. I feel like website and resource bank could be. Maybe rolled into one, maybe like a half hour a week
Wait.
on.
Yeah, so the
Scholarship.
website stuff's gonna be outreach,
I thought we were combining 3 and 4.
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
he's thinking about
gotcha.
adding 6. I heard possibly adding 6 to 3 and 4, being part of that. Is that what I did? I hear?
3 and 4, we're adding 3 and 4 together, and then
Yeah.
we're allocating 4 hours to that.
Mhm.
And then. So we jump down to maintaining the website.
Well, let me ask a question, clarifying question. About 3 and 4. This resource bank, is this gonna be something that's shared with all families or only the ones that are asking for resources? Because my impression by reading number 4 is that. It's a place that any family can go to check out what's available.
Yeah. All families have access to it. And so I guess now we're gonna check in with all students.
That's right, and create the facilitator will create those processes as well for the student check-ins. And I think that could also be included a little bit there, which is good.
Maybe even do something for those like 8th graders that are graduating.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
like, hey, you're still got 4 more years to go, but you've done great.
Right?
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's
It
milestone.
is,
It
it's a
really
big
is,
deal. I love that.
And the more positive reinforcement that we do for our youth, the more that they want to move
Coach.
forward on, completing those goals, because every little goal accomplished is a.
Yeah.
May I ask about number 6? How long do you think that takes?
It is gathering all the information about scholarships, posting on the website, as well as maintaining from the videos
So,
and links.
Y'all are lucky because all of these processes are done. So I've created that, I've created the surveys, I've created the RSVP, all of that is done. So it's just a weekly update maintain. At this point, the scholarship list is done unless there's a new one that comes, then that's added. So
Next year, but you still next year have to go and look through, whoever the person is.
Whoever the
So,
person
like,
is.
An hour a week.
So what I do now, cause I'm real good with the Googs, I put in a code and it changes dates from 2024 to 2025. And it takes 2 seconds and literally 3,000 dates are changed.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the processes are in place. Website, we don't have access to. So that's about really an hour. Parent Square goes to every parent in the program. So that's whatever needs to be sent, copying, putting into Parent Square, it's sent instantly. So I would say maybe an hour.
An hour a week.
Yeah. Yeah, for just updating records, that kind of stuff.
So, so then can we talk about 5? So technically we are down to 9 hours.
I think we should split between 5 and 7.
Yeah.
Because they're not- especially for the older kids, there's a lot. Like a lot of parents on it.
Right.
Opportunities outside of college.
Yeah.
So you think,
And that goes with the goal that we had to increase post-secondary. But that was really hard for us to capture, Lacey, because we don't currently maintain if those kids are going. So we do offer the campus tours, we offer the scholarship presentations. The vocational opportunities, I would love to see more involvement with that for my own children and just connecting with Project Youth Plus that does internships. Or CC.
So am I hearing that with the nine remaining hours, that you would like for those 9 remaining hours to be geared about organizing and implementing the different events as well as vocational
Yeah.
presentations?
Yeah, because those systems are not already in place. So that's gonna take more time for the facilitator for next year. And then also, yeah.
In terms of measurement, on the ODE website where they have the school report card, the online report cards where it's like the public access, you can go in and look up any district. They have a data point on it now with this new online report card, which is like a college enrollment one.
Okay.
We did not have data per district because the numbers were so low. But
Less
we've
than
been
10.
reaching out to Stacy Parrish to try to get regional data because they can provide us with regional data that's not available
be
to the
great.
public. So hopefully that is a
Okay.
data point that can help us with that in the
Yeah,
future.
that would be
So
great, because currently all we get from there is like graduation rates, you know. So that would be great. And then Phoenix Talent consistently puts less than 10.
All right,
They have more, but you know.
so I'm just going to really quickly, so we're thinking, we have priority number one about culture nights. Priority number 2 is language instruction. Priority number 3, it's almost, if we were to reword it, is like support to students and families, to help them navigate the school system.
Yeah, and I could even
Yeah.
increase that to include the tutoring, because I think that was a huge priority. Or it's gonna be separate from the Indian Ed facilitator position as its own priority. So either we need to increase the hours for that one, or that decision will need to be made. If you're so loving.
Social and educational family support.
So we're taking
off number 8 on our list.
Okay, taking it out, so.
Because we won't have any time left, we have the 9 hours for these two, so we're taking off the support at SOESD.
Okay.
And then we go to tabling.
Then it goes
Yeah.
to tabling, that still goes into the, yeah.
Okay, we have that. So this is 3 and 4 is now renamed support to students and families to navigate the school system. All right, so that's 3. Then we have
Number 5, and that we included number 8 and
I'm wondering if I'm just trying to think like the idea, like the more we put, the more we have to gather, the more they would have to report on.
Yeah.
And so we want to do it, so that's important.
Yeah.
So so that, okay, so then organize family events, maintain scholarship and okay, school. All right, so I think we did really well thinking about that in terms of hours. So now I think and people might need a break before we move on to the next part. And the next part is basically this is what we did, what like based on last year's for culture night. Is determining which objectives and which activities we will be selected in the application. And so we would have to do the same thing for native language exposure. And then we would have to do another one for the support to students and families.
Sure. And Lacey, are we correct in assuming that we're gonna do 2 to 3 of these goals for the main application?
So you guys can choose how many you want to do. What I would suggest thinking about, and this is sort of the analogy that I think about from my teaching world, is that, like, say, for example, in the classroom, right? You have a teacher is teaching so many different things, but what is actually getting graded and going in the grade book? Like, what are the things that are being focused on so intentionally and are non-negotiable to the point where you're going to formally assess them and put them in a grade book? There's all this other wonderful stuff that's also being taught, but isn't necessarily going to go in the grade book. So thinking about that analogy, like, we have all these wonderful things that we know that our Indian Ed facilitator and that our program is going to be trying to provide. But what are the main things that we are going to consider non-negotiables that are going to be measured and that we are committed to and know that we have the resources to really make happen? And there may be additional things that are the things that we add in as we are able, but or maybe are not something that we want to specifically measure. They're going to be less intentional and more just sort of like part of the general program. So choose the things that you feel very strongly are non-negotiables, that the Indian Ed facilitator is going to be told, these are the things you need to focus on. And these are the things we have to, we have to collect data on, and we have
And
to
measure.
measure the effectiveness.
Thank you so
So-
much for making that clarification. So like, there might be way more stuff done, but these are just the things that we're discussing that we're gonna
main
collect
frame.
data on and what we're applying for the grant to do.
Yes,
Like that.
Okay.
so that's why I only put space for up to 5.
Okay.
But we don't have to use all 5, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wonder if we need to pause, it probably lunchtime for a lot of
Yeah,
people.
we do a bathroom
And the
break.
little
Yeah.
here too.
Yeah, give the kids some
Get some
food and yeah. I think that we should do that.
Okay.
So when do we wanna reconvene so that the people who are online know when to come back?
Randall, Jackie, Lacey. All right, so this is running long, with our apologies, so I'm gonna pause the recording. I'm gonna walk outside, it's super hot up here, so everyone from home, enjoy that. We're upstairs. Yeah, so it's 12:46 right now. How about 1:15? Give everyone a half hour to stretch their legs, grab some gin, and yeah. Does that sound good with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And break.